across whatever you listen to podcasts on. This is the Silent Film Music Podcast with Ben Modell. It's the podcast that takes you inside the mind of someone as they prepare for, perform, and reflect upon performances of live musical accompaniments to silent films. I'm Ben Modell. I'm a silent film accompanist, historian, and presenter and educator. I'm your host, and I'm joined, as always, by co-host and co-producer Kerr Lockhart. How are you, Kerr?
Hi, Ben. It seems like you've just turned the corner on a whole lot of plate spinning. There was equal measure of distributing and playing live. It was all sort of happening all at once.
Yeah, there's quite a lot. We should just mention to folks tuned out for 25 seconds, this is episode 58 of the Silent Film Music Podcast, and we're recording mid-May 2023 for posting later in May. This has been a long slog, if I may use that expression on television. We're all sort of coming out of something with the recent change of the emergency status of the pandemic going away, and less masking and tracking of COVID and all that kind of stuff, and heading into summer when the weather is nicer and people are going out and doing even more things. But
a lot of the festivals are kind of going back to the way they were in 2019.
Oh yeah, they kind of are there, and some of them are doing hybrid presentations, which a lot of venues are doing. Just in general, I know that a friend of mine had a performance of one of his one-man shows, a play called Courage. It was written and performed by John Pielmeyer. I couldn't make it, but I saw in the announcement, it's also streaming. So I think everybody has sort of adopted this live, but also on Zoom later. At the beginning of last year, and beginning of 2022, several projects lurched forward. Everyone had enough focus or determination or whatever to move things forward. So Andrew Simpson got in touch with me about his Borzage project, and John Morsalis got in touch with me about his Lon Chaney Volume 2 project. I had also did a Kickstarter for the Raymond Griffith films, simultaneously with having licensed two Tom Mix films to TCM. And the licensing fees from that would cover the production of those films and the restoration of them. And at the beginning of 2022, I figured, I've got one or two shows a month.
We're not a business podcast, but I think it will be interesting with the Tom Mix to simply put it out without the pre-order built-in element of Kickstarter, since Kickstarter for restorations, that's really what you're doing. It's a pre-order. And I know you've done titles in the past. I think the Marion Davies, some of them came out without Kickstarters.
Some of the Marion Davies films were Kickstarted by Ed LaRusso. Mm-hmm. So he had that element of that. And then what I did with Beverly of Graustark was that it was a limited, quote-unquote, limited edition Kickstarter where it only ran for a week, and I was only taking X number of backers because it really is a lot. And this is what I was sort of leaning toward, is that I figured, I have time to do production and then order fulfillment on a Kickstarter while shepherding these 3 or 4 other projects, plus a 5th volume of Accidentally Preserved, sourcing something from John Morsalis also. And I thought, I had plenty of time, and then all of a sudden, Labor Day last year, all of a sudden, we just came roaring back. We went from 2nd gear to 5th, or whatever you want to call it, and I would talk with people. I said, what just happened? In the middle of October, we're all just, we've had, 17 juggling pins thrown at us. Go! And a lot of people I spoke with felt the same way. And so I want to honor all the in-person bookings that are coming my way, and honor the fact that people want me to come out and play and to perform in person, while also dealing with these several trains that have left the station. And then also this was further compounded by last year, not only I, but pretty much everybody else working on the Undercrank projects had life stuff happen that just made their individual pieces of the puzzle take them a little longer. It's just what happened. I'm not upset about it. It's just we all had stuff like, I can't do that this month. I can't record for 6 weeks or whatever, which made things take even longer. And it's really only this week when I'm just sort of realizing, I'm kind of done. The Lon Chaney came out last I think August. The Borzage came out earlier this year. We're about to release the Raymond Griffith and the Tom Mix, and there's still the Francis Ford project running in the background. But it was really a lot, and there are a couple of people who had approached me about projects, and I wasn't blowing anybody off, but I just said I can't even consider anything till July. There just wasn't room in my brain, and I don't know if this. I know you've on top of being a grandfather, and you're a playwright, and you've had things going on, and I know the thing I kept it reminds me of, if you know the movie Wonder Man with Danny Kaye.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, his Harold Lloyd-ish character kept getting caught up in all these plot machinations, and he'd been on his way to a deli to get potato salad, and he would just in the middle of everything go, potato salad.
No telling what I can do once I learn the ropes. Didn't I bring you here when you wanted potato salad?
Potato salad! Potato salad! I have to go.
Stop, Eddie!
Let's get out of here.
Brooklyn's full of them.
And remember that. And so I don't know about you, but I kept having these what I call potato salad moments. Oh my God, I was supposed to send a DCP to that theater, or was I supposed to record something, or I mean, were you in a place like that also with all your work and everything?
Absolutely, yeah, it was absolutely crazy. Family business, the playwriting business, yeah.
When you send something in and you wait to see what they you, as much as you tell yourself no news is good news, sometimes no news is really bad news. It's just bad, and just tell me, just write to me and say no thanks. But I mean, I did find myself in this position where, it's like my friend Keith Nelson from the Bindleston Family Circus, who I've watched him over a bunch of years build up his plate spinning act, watch him do 5 plates and then 6. I think it stops at 8. And I don't know if he's gone to 9, but that's about as much as a human being can do. And then, I think we were all spinning 10 or 11 plates. So things are slowly wrapping up, and I have lots of little loose ends. But lots of things I had ideas for had to go on a back burner for 2 to 3 months. And I'm looking forward to maybe having a slightly reduced schedule this summer where I can, go back to some things I wanted to improve on in terms of my music, and reinvent a couple of ideas with the organ that I've been wanting to have the mental space to lean into and see if I can make happen, and just shepherd these 2 home video releases out to the public. I mean, nobody's seen the Raymond Griffith films looking this good since they were in theaters in 1925 and 26, and the Tom Mix films as well. I mean, one of the films no one has seen since 1929, and Sky High has never looked this good. So I'm really excited for people to finally get to see these, especially Tom Mix.
By the way,
yeah,
not within your control, but contrary to what we said, I think in the last podcast, Clash of the Wolves and Where the North Begins is now available for pre-order. It's going to be delivered sometime this summer.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, God, there were so many things I recorded. I mean, I literally got to a point in April where I thought I can't record any more music. I'd just been just generating so much music for so many months in a recording situation, which is what we talked about in another earlier episode. Mm-hmm. I forgot. Yeah, no, actually, while you were cutting the episode 57, I saw something online that it was going to be released as a standalone. So Clash of the Wolves will be out as a standalone release and not part of the Silent Dogs box set. And not only that, but you're going to get 2 for 1 when you buy Clash of the Wolves. There's another feature on there called Where the North Begins, with a score by John Marsalis. So you'll get the 2 of us as well in this new, it's one of these things where, Rin Tin Tin, the movie with the German Shepherd, why pay any attention to it? But one of the other things that's happened since we had our last episode is that I was at the TCM Film Festival, and we talked about this on the last episode about recording in a vacuum and wondering what the vibe was going to be like in the room. And it was the complete other end of the spectrum. The Clash of the Wolves show was one of the closing night films, and first of all, there's nothing as enthusiastic as a TCM fan audience. They're there for the ride, even if they don't know the movie. One of the films I saw was a new restoration of The In-Laws, And Dave Karger, I think, who did the intro with two of the former cast members, and he said, "I'm just curious, how many of you have never seen this movie?" And half the hands went up.
Extraordinary.
But it was a packed house.
This
And
is the
so,
the Arthur Hiller,
the original,
Alan Arkin,
the good one. Yeah, yeah, the Andrew Bergman script. Yeah, it's just yeah. So. Clash of the Wolves, we're at the Hollywood Legion Theater. First of all, the way I got the organ in this year, because my friend Jim Henry, the creator and developer of the Miditzer software, which I used to use, but I don't anymore, what we used to do is Jim had a small console and would bring that in, but Jim relocated to Chicago during the pandemic. So what do? Well, I figured out, this is another one of my, there's always a workaround schemes, where I realized that a company called Nord that makes these cherry red, Norwegian red keyboards makes a combo keyboard that looks like a Hammond B3 and organ pedals, both of which have MIDI. And somebody at the TCM Festival, whose job it is to find musical instruments and stuff like that, found a musical instrument rental place in L.A. that had these things. They rented it, brought it in. I put the wires together, and bingo, right out of the gate, it works.
Fantastic.
And we send the sound, like I always do, into the sound system. It sounds unbelievable. So that works. So we have the sound. It's this beautiful theater. I find out, I think maybe a day before I'm flying out, Jacqueline Stewart is going to introduce the film. Oh, fantastic! She hosts Silent Sunday Nights, and I think it'd be fun to connect with her again and for the audience as well. And then I'm there 2 days. I get another email. Jacqueline wants to interview you on stage for a few minutes before the film. Okay, fine. So we have all of this excitement building up, and Jacqueline is there, and it was just great hanging out with her in the green room beforehand. We took pictures in front of the step and repeat. She goes up and introduces the film in a really great introduction, and introduces me, and we talk. So there's all this already, this hoopla, and she, part of the intro, Jacqueline explained why we're showing a Rin Tin Tin picture. I got to tell you, so this goes back to the enthusiasm level. Mm-hmm. So we go right into the picture. It gets, it starts with a bang. It doesn't waste any time, and actually, unless there's footage missing, we go from the main title, a credit title, and I think there's a cast title, and then instead of having a title card that introduces something, and then we have our first wide shot, we cut, bang, right to a big forest fire.
Wow.
So I knew that was coming, so I knew as soon as I see the last credit title fade, I lean into, burning fire music to just grab the audience. But this is the thing that within maybe 45 seconds, we are introduced to Rin Tin Tin. There's a shot of the dog. He gets a title card. We got back to him. There's an applause break for Rin Tin Tin. He's done nothing except show up in a medium shot. And I thought, okay, I don't have to worry about the rest of this film. And
the audience caught the cue without...
they saw Rin Tin Tin, and they knew he was the hero of the picture and burst into applause.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I thought, oh, okay, this is Batman or Superman, but
right.
with they were on the ride, and all the way through there were moments where the bad guy, the guy in a fedora with a thin mustache with a sneer, he got booed a couple of times. There were moments when Rin Tin Tin jumps off of a roof and lands on him and attacks him, and the audience cheers. I mean, it's not one of those things where an audience is told, "Oh, please boo and cheer and all this stuff." But it just happened organically, and it was just so exciting to see that the film had that effect in an audience setting. And I hope if anyone listening is at an art house or works for one or knows a friend who programs there, book the print. We showed the 35 print, but it's also, it can be shown on DCP from the Blu-ray. It's one of those things like Tom Mix. Everybody knows what Rin Tin Tin is or who he is, but they've never seen one of the movies. And they're actually very good. It's very, very well made film. So that was a thing where I had a few different expectations musically. And as soon as I heard that applause break, I thought, oh, I don't have to help the audience go on the ride at all. I could actually just sort of lean back a little bit and not really worry about it, just find where my themes go and just follow it. But it was really, really exciting. And the really cool thing was that in Jacqueline's introduction of me, she mentioned the Silent Comedy Watch Party, and it got a little hand from the audience. We had a lot of Watch Party fans there. There was one guy, Doug and his wife, Sarah. He came to the show wearing a Steve Massa shirt. And I got a selfie with him. And there were people coming up to me who I did not know, who just came up and said, "Thank you for doing the watch party, and it just helped me get through the pandemic." And I've told, of course, Susan, and Steve, and Mana, and Crystal, and Marlene about these encounters. But it happened a number of times.
You just recently had a new episode from the Nasty Women collection.
Yes.
How did that go? Have you seen responses? Have people been coming back to you?
The comments and email that I've seen that have been posted have been very positive. Somebody sent in a contribution to the show over through PayPal, and in their message said that they were so glad to see him that they've ordered a copy and stuff like that. And the ironic thing is we were, Maggie Hennefeld, who along with Elif Rung and Kainicha were our guests, who were two of the three co-curators of the set, along with Laura Horak. In Maggie's introduction, she mentioned the origins of why they decided to call this cinema's first Nasty Women without mentioning a certain former president's name. And we all thought, yeah, well, that's so far in the past. And then he used the phrase on CNN earlier this week, and I thought, well, I guess it helps. Maybe it will help promote the set. Maybe the algorithm will boost. I don't know.
Good marketing move.
But the films went over well. People really enjoyed seeing them, and I had said to both Maggie and Elif, as much as we all think, everybody knows about the set, there are lots of people who have absolutely no idea what it is, and so we were happy to have them on. Thrilled that Kino Lorber allowed us to share the films with a watermark, and it's a 90-minute infomercial for this set, which it's 4 discs, 99 films. It's just and I think what a production.
What wasn't clear, I think, when the release first came out, the thing I think to really emphasize is they decided for this box, theoretically there will be more boxes, but for this one they deliberately decided to focus on comedy. And
sure. Although there are some Western shorts, I think, on one of the discs.
That the
dramas, yeah, but it's mostly comedies, yeah.
Male silent comedians fall into basically 2 categories: they're dumb or crazy, or both. Mm-hmm. But the women are anarchic and rebellious,
and gleefully so.
Yes, it's a different thing. Sometimes they might be not dumb; they might be dizzy.
Yeah.
To use the term of 100 years ago.
Yeah.
They don't do dunces. They do kicking up the heels against society.
Yeah. Then the films are lots of fun. So we were happy to have have them on that episode and help promote the box and the films and those great comedians from over 100 years ago. Well, let's take a little pause to refresh. Here is something that I recorded in February, and I love sharing this when it comes up. And I remember to bring my recorder and to actually record this. Every year I do a show at the Town School in Upper East Side of Manhattan, and we always do something for the 4th graders. But if there's a fit in the schedule, they arrange for the kindergartners to come in and do a separate program for them. I just show them Oranges and Lemons with Stan Laurel, because it never fails. And here's about a minute and a half of my recording of my live performance, augmented by a room full of 5-year-olds screaming their heads off with laughter. These people don't know anything from what is a silent movie, what is a black and white, what is a microphone. They know nothing except, here, watch this. And it's about halfway in. This is it starts about a minute before Stan winds up doing a version of the Dead and Alive gag with one of his co-workers. Here it is from February of 2023. A couple of minutes of Oranges and Lemons with Stan Laurel. couple of minutes of Oranges and Lemons with Stan Laurel and lots of loud, raucous laughter from 4 and 5-year-olds at the
I
town
expect
school.
Some sound effect people are going to steal that.
Oh,
that
gosh.
clip.
I love sharing that with people because they have no expectation.
And
It
if
still works. It
if
just
you
works.
Don't know Oranges and Lemons. Seek that one out on YouTube. It's one of the just really dumbest no-plan movies. Clearly, they just said, here's our setting. We have wooden boxes and fresh fruit. What can we do with that? You know, we've all been doing stage slapstick for years, some of us from Fred Carno and from us this and that, and there's no real plan, but we're just going to do all the gags we know.
Yeah, and Stan is an arsenal of physical comedy gags, and that's what I tell the kids. They're 4 years old. They can't read the titles. I said, all you need to know is there's this funny guy. His name is Stan. In the first half of the movie, he's picking oranges off of trees. And it doesn't go so good. And then in the second half, he's in a factory, and he's trying to pack the oranges into boxes. That's all you need to know, and that's all they need to know. And it just they connect with what they're seeing, and it's fun, and it's a shot in the arm for me, and reassurance that, you know, there's something about the way silent film and its language and what I call the silent film universe, it just works. You know, the less you think about it and worry about, is anybody going to like this or that, and, you know, I just finished teaching my course at Wesleyan, and again, my students had almost no reference whatsoever for silent film, and we went everywhere, all the way from one-reel dramas from the early teens all the way through The Crowd. And there are some films that were a little harder to follow, like Warning Shadows, which has no titles and very hard to follow. And there were some films like The Mark of Zorro or the Keaton films that were very easy to, but they still work. They don't need any kind of accommodations per se to understand this. So that's why I wanted to share that little clip of kids. So if you know of any, go ahead.
Goes in the top drawer of audience development, which you say is the main
audience
part of your
preservation.
agenda.
Yeah, so if you see any silent comedy film shows happening this summer, and there will be some of those, and you have kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, people you babysit, take them to the show. I will be playing For Safety Last at the Jacob Burns Film Center in July. Check their website for the schedule on that. It's a matinee. Bring kids to anything like that, because that means that they won't run away when you say Charlie Chaplin or Buster Keaton to them, or the word silent. We're also gearing up for Josh Mills and I and Fantagraphics and Pat Thomas. We are gearing up for the publication date in July of the book Ernie in Kovacs Land. To paraphrase what he used to have as an announcement at the beginning of his shows, is the shortest 279 pages in publishing. They just seem long. All of his shows, the shortest half hour in television. It just seems long. Yeah, so that book is coming out in July, and we're doing what we can to get the word out.
Yeah, we've had fun talking about Ernie and music, because that's not a small topic.
Gosh, no.
Something I always have found of interest. I came to Ernie Kovacs, like a lot of people, through the ABC series at the end, or the specials, or whatever they're called.
They were specials, yeah.
So they're famous for beginning with a shot of an oscilloscope and a recording of what we know as Mac the Knife. It was published under the title of the Moritat, the Death Song. Which is sung by a minor character in the Threepenny Opera.
And I think the recording that we hear is from the original cast album.
No, that's the really interesting thing, because by 1961, Ernie had a choice. So there are recordings that were made in 1928 when the play was written. It was written to celebrate the 200th anniversary of the Beggar's Opera, which it's based on.
Okay.
That was the idea. They were we're just going to do a quick rewrite of the Beggar's Opera. And then it got out of control. And they wrote a whole different musical.
Und der Haifisch, der hat Zähne, und die trägt im Gesicht. Und Mäkis, der hat ein Messer, doch das Messer sieht man nicht.
And those were very popular recordings. They even made it here to the States because when Kurt Weill met George Gershwin congratulated him on those wonderful Three Penny Opera recordings, but he's got to get rid of that terrible girl singer with the scratchy voice, who was, of course, Weill's wife, Lotte Lenya, who was sitting there at the table.
Gosh. Oh.
They called it, I think, she had an Ichika voice.
Meine Herren, heute sehen Sie mich Gläser abwaschen und ich mache das Bett für jeden. Und Sie geben mir einen Penny und ich bedanke mich schnell. Und Sie sehen meine Lumpen und das lumpige Hotel. Und Sie wissen nicht, mit wem Sie reden. Und Sie wissen nicht, mit wem Sie reden.
But so that was the recording for 30-some years.
Yeah.
Then 1954, Mark Blitzstein writes an English adaptation, and it really is an adaptation. It is kind of its own work. But it does bring the Moratat to the attention of the English-speaking world.
Oh, the shark has pretty teeth, dear, and he shows them pearly white. Just a jackknife has Macheath, dear, and he keeps it out of sight.
Before that, there'd been one production that opened in 1933 and flopped.
Yeah.
So that's all the people knew. They might have seen the Pabst film, but that was not anything that was going to make this an American popular song. What happened is in the same year, Dixieland expert Turk Murphy actually thought that this song would suit Lewis. He makes an arrangement and gives it to Lewis's producer at Columbia Records, George Avakian. Lewis takes a look at the charts. He loves it. He's going to record it. For some reason, Lotte Lenya was actually in the studio when the recording was made, and her name winds up in the lyric.
Yeah.
And has a lot of fun with it.
Suki Tawdry, Jenny Diver, Lotte Lenya, Sweet Lucy Brown. Oh, the line forms on the right, dears. Now that Mackie's back in town. Take it, Satch.
That's 1954. And that's a bit of a hit. It becomes a little jazz hit. It's a highlight of Ella in Berlin, where famously Ella Fitzgerald forgot all the lyrics.
Oh, okay.
And she just improvises a whole new set of lyrics to it. But
So you heard it. Yes, we swung it. And we tried to. Yes, we sung it. You won't recognize it. It's a surprise hit. This tune command the night.
then that was, I think, in 1958 or so. In 1959, Billy May writes a hard-swinging arrangement for Bobby Darin.
Yeah.
And
that's the one we all know.
That's the one that puts the song into the American Songbook.
Now you hear about Louis Miller. He disappeared, babe, after drawing out all his hard-earned cash. And now Maggie Heath spins just like a sailor. Could it be our boy's done something rash?
So it's in the zeitgeist. Everyone knows about it.
Everyone knows about it. Now, also in 1958, Philips Records in the Netherlands says, hey, it's 30 years since Three Penny Opera. We have this new thing called Stereo Records. let's make a stereo complete record of Threepenny Opera. In fact, actually, there was an ongoing project. They had hired Lenya to produce a whole lot of Weill, especially Brecht Weill, works that were recorded in Germany. And I think Threepenny was the first stereo one.
Uh-huh.
So they assemble a idiosyncratic German cast. They're not trying to get pop hits. This is done by the classical division. And in fact, it's picked up by the Columbia Records classical division.
Oh,
so
that's what Ernie used. I knew there was some older Columbia.
So that's what it is. It's a 1958.
Sorry about
that. It was actually sort of new, and it has that extremely wide vibrato singer.
Oh gosh,
playing the street singer, and I don't know, maybe Ernie thought that would look good on the oscilloscope.
Und der Haifisch, der hat Zähne und die trägt er im Gesicht. Und McKees, der hat ein Messer, doch das Messer sieht man nicht.
Who knows? His choices are just so beyond out of left field. And it maybe it was just a sort of a flip on the idea that Mac the Knife was so well known and such this big swinging hit. Oh, I know. I'll just take this really dry German language version and throw. And he was doing that with the Dutch Masters commercials also, where you have these slow and steady sight gags with this very slow and steady piece of music.
Long build, yeah. I'm just imagining the ABC executives sitting down and saying, well, I don't. This is funny. Maybe I'll have one of those great bathtub gags, and they're sitting down to watch the tape of Ernie's new show, and out comes "Und der Haifisch."
Yeah,
the first.
Yeah, and all of the shows. One of the things I noticed in going through all of the specials, because I had seen these excerpted, in the Best of Kovacs.
Well, that's
series
the thing.
that John
they got
Lillis
chopped
did.
up. Yeah,
right. But the actual specials, the format is basically there's a blackout gag followed by the opening titles. That kaleidoscope image of a silhouette of fingers playing the theme. You hear it. We cut to Ernie in the control room, and he just says, "Thanks for watching." And then we cut. So then the first major sequence in the show every time is the oscilloscope with that music and repurposing sight gags that were originally clues shot for Take a Good Look.
All right,
I
now
always think
there's something
of
only you and Josh would know, because those sight gags are so famous. I mean, I first saw them when Laugh-In went on the air. A lot of people scurried back to the research room and said, "Hey, here's the origin of all those Laugh-In gags."
Yeah,
we have the Ernie Kovacs sight gags. So I mean, I always saw them cut up and isolated that way. They were for the, and I did not know until now that those were for the game show.
Most of them means he shot new gags as well, but the idea behind doing the game show with the clues was to bank the clues, like so that he would have these things so he could create another show without having to do so much work. And then Jolene Brand is part of the ensemble cast, and she and George Schlatter are a couple, so George is on the set hanging out there. So it's a very slow evolution from Kovacs and these blackout gags to what Laugh-In becomes a bunch of years later. The weird thing, of course, is that this is what Ernie opens with, is this shot of an oscilloscope with that bizarre recording. And remember, his specials were once a month, and they were on ABC at 10:30 following The Untouchables. So if you can imagine watching Elliot Ness and Robert Stack and all these people, and then it's over, and then this comes on.
Well,
and you were either most of America said, "Yep, time for bed," and then all the people who were the Kovacs fans, that's when the house, everything stops and we watch this. But it's an unusual musical choice. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, well, that's when BBC Two ran Monty Python. Was Sunday at 10:30.
Yeah. It's as Ernie's publicist, Ernie and Edie's publicist, Henry Bollinger, told me. Yeah, that was a bargain basement time slot. And it was nobody wanted it, and as long as Ernie sold cigars. It was fun because this is still the era when the sponsor buys the airtime.
Right.
So as long as General Consolidated Cigars is happy with the ratings being good enough, and Ernie's selling Dutch Masters, then they're happy. And he just did this every month. But he got to do. I mean, this is the Kovacs way. You got to do it my way. Let me do it my way. If you don't like it, that's fine. Go thread up a Western. And so he had complete creative control, and I don't know if the people at ABC had any say. They may have thought, "What the heck is this?"
But again, he was smart enough to make his place a safe place where he could do it his way.
Yes, yeah.
He had that
absolutely.
savvy to say, "Okay, I'm not going to try and I'm not Orson Welles. I'm not going to blow up the whole system.
Yeah,
I'm going to make this little spot where I can do what I want and." The guys who write the checks are fine with it.
Yeah. So yeah. That's very interesting. That the history you were just sharing about how Moritat became this pop tune in the 50s of Mac the Knife, and so if you want to see what we're talking about, take a look online. Take a good look online for Here's Edie, box set of Edie Adams show, and also if you don't have any of the box sets of Ernie Kovacs television shows, the ones from Shout Factory, the ones that we put together from the original shows that have not been cut into pieces, do pick them up. And the book, Ernie in Kovacs Land, which is co-edited by Josh Mills, me, and Pat Thomas, is the ultimate companion guide to Kovacs. It's just everything and anything that Kovacs wrote or had published or drew or doodled. There are handwritten notes for the Eugene movie he never got to make. Photographs of things you've never seen. Joe Michaelis in costume as Rancid the Devil Horse, stuff like that. You'll enjoy it. So look for Ernie in Kovacs Land.
A couple of laundry
from
lists and
yes,
shopping.
Yeah.
So we'll have links for those in the show notes.
Absolutely. June 2023 is the 10th anniversary of my first DVD release for Undercrank Productions. June 2013 is when I released Accidentally Preserved Volume 1.
You couldn't have had a more apropos entrance into being a video distributor. I mean...
How so?
Well, that you really sort of walked backwards into it. I mean, it's actually called Accidentally Preserved. Like, I never...
Yeah.
This is a release I never meant to do.
Right. And the film, just like the way the films, nobody thought, we'll be saving these for generations. It was never the idea behind launching the Codescope library in 1925. But that was my first release, and in honor of this, and this is like maybe the one thing I'm appreciative of Facebook for, is that in December of last year of 2022, it popped up a memory. Oh, this is your first Kickstarter, and I thought, oh, wait a second. This happened 10 years ago, and I thought, oh, that means that the release of Accidentally Preserved is coming up 10 years from whenever that was, which is June of this year. So I've spent the last 5 or 6 months making an event out of the fact that it's our 10th anniversary. We have 27 releases out. We'll have another one out in June with the Raymond Griffith Project, and a 29th title out in July. But all throughout June, from June 1st to June 30th, every single Undercrank Productions release will be on sale on whatever online platform you like to work with. I've worked with the folks at Alliance Entertainment, who's my manufacturer-on-demand company, and they're promoting it to their B2B people and on their various websites, and to actual video stores that buy physical product. And I've also spent, a bunch of months working on publicity pieces. So there'll be a dozen or more podcasts that I'm guests on, or articles that'll appear in print about the anniversary. But I was looking back, and I realized that when I did my Kickstarter in 2012, two things. One is today everybody thinks when something turns up, oh, who's going to kickstart that? Can that be a Kickstarter? So it's like it's become so commonplace. Well, of course we're going to kickstart it. And when I did this, nobody had gone this route before. No one, at least with a classic film project, no one had gone to the fans for funding. Kickstarter itself had only been around for 3 years. It launched in I think late in 2009, but I was very much aware of it, as well as something. Patreon was brand new at the time, and harnessed. I just saw these 3 pieces. I have, you can raise money for the production by going to the fans and letting them know that by pitching in, they're helping make this available. And then by doing it as manufacture on demand, I don't have to make 1,500 of them, stick them somewhere, and then hope for the best. And then also by having not only a good product, but this is the fourth prong, which is a box art. And I'm just lucked out with having worked with Marlene Weissman for so many years at that point. I just asked her to create the box art for this, and because one of the things I realized is that the artwork is your first line of defense online. If it looks self-published, it looks self-published. But if you make it look like it isn't, nobody knows that it's self-published. The other thing that starting what turned out to be a label was out of an interest in picking myself as opposed to waiting for somebody else to pick me. There are only so many film accompanists, and there's only so many of us who get chosen for certain home video projects with the certain number of other distributors and home video producers, and it's not always me. And I thought, well, I wonder how else I can get my work out there. Mark Roth and his Real Classic DVD label was supportive of what I was doing and had me score tons of things for them, and which was a great opportunity for me. But I thought this would be a way to do something like that. And then my second project was The Mishaps of Musty Suffer, where I was going to get stuff instead of from my own collection, but from the Library of Congress, and that turned into my the co-branding deal that I now have had with the library for the last 8 years. So, but this was I just wear enough hats to know how to produce a DVD and to release it and to do publicity. I've just taught myself how to do that, and one of the things I've learned is that when you tell people or somebody says, "Oh, you got a lot of publicity," it's something that you don't receive. You literally get it. You have to go and get it.
It's what
a lot of people think
earned press.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people think, oh, such and such a newspaper must think you're a big. No, you have to. You spend years developing connections and relationships with people who are writers and who like your work. So, really excited to be able to celebrate the 10th anniversary by lowering the prices on everything, so the people who don't know about the filling out the landscape non-Mount Rushmore titles that the Undercrank has released can get their feet wet. And for the completists out there, they can fill out their Undercrank shelf.
I think you undersell some of these titles. I think with the Raymond Griffith and Knighthood was in Flower, or just some that come to mind immediately, which are at least small landmarks in silent film history.
Oh no, absolutely. These are titles where they wouldn't sell enough units to warrant the kind of resources and attention and focus that some of the other outfits would be willing to invest themselves in, and that's not a dig at them. I don't blame them.
Mm-hmm.
And my feeling is like, oh, you don't want to put this out? That's fine. I'll put it out.
Mm-hmm.
You can do the big box sets and the Keaton restorations and whatever. That's great. We're all doing the same thing, but these are the films you went to see. in the teens and 20s while you were waiting for Harold Lloyd to make his next feature. And they deserve an audience, and they deserve to be seen. And I feel like not in some cases, some parts of it are about filling out the landscape, and in some parts of it are about restoring the reputations of people like Douglas MacLean and Marion Davies. I mean, it's been a great year for her with the publication of Laura Gabrielle's excellent biography of her, Captain of Her Soul. Now you can actually see the films and find out, they aren't stuffy costume dramas that nobody liked. They're actually really good. And yes, Marion Davies is a brilliant performer. And same thing with Raymond Griffith. And, Tom Mix had never appeared on TCM before the broadcast a week or two ago. And I'm pleased to have been part of this, along with everybody else who works on this on these projects.
I mean, the big news is that this is not taking your medicine to see these films. This is not something you're worthy that you're doing. It's good because it's good for you. These movies are fun to watch.
This is not. This is not eating your cultural vegetables. This is good stuff. Yeah.
And it was meant to be fun 100 years ago, and remarkably, they're still fun now. We've talked about those things where cultural references have gotten a little difficult, but none of them negate the films.
No, I mean, we remind ourselves that we're watching a cinema recording of a cultural mores or whatever that existed at the time, and it's an old movie, and this is where the culture was. But the films, if anything, I'm hoping that with the release of Sky High, somebody will, or some people will, dig into history books and newspapers and help us understand the plot line of Sky High, which part of it involves smuggling Chinese people into California from Mexico. And that part of the plot kind of disappears for most of the picture, and then it comes around again. But there must have been something in the news that sparked that off, because it's never explained, but it doesn't really make any sense either. And it's really about smuggling jewels across the border, and also these other people, but it's never explained why. So I'm hoping that we'll learn more about that. But the main thing is that you're going to get to see Sky High looking as good as it possibly can, and with the original tinting and toning reinstated. This is something that Crystal, our associate producer, found the original tinting sheet, and then Catherine Pratt, who did our grading and who also did the digital restoration work on Sky High, reinstated the original tinting and toning. And now what tinting and toning is, originally, for tinting, the film's base would be a specific color so that the white or lighter areas would be that color. And toning is something where the film's emulsion would absorb a color, so the black or darker areas would be imbued with that color, sometimes both at the same time. So this has now been put back in digitally, and you'll see it in some places where you have both pink tint and blue tone. So you have some sequences, like during the climax, toward the end where Tom is flying a plane over the Grand Canyon, where you have blue tone or blue-gray tone and pink, because it's supposed to be taking place at twilight, and it's quite effective.
We've become aware that the colorists are really important in these issues, even in a pure black and white film. So what does a colorist do with a black and white sequence? Why are they so important?
Well, what you're able to do digitally, and this was happening even before digital, is that you could go shot by shot and correct the exposure. A preservation negative or a fine grain or master positive may have printing issues in it that need correcting. Some shots may be a few points too high or too low. So what somebody doing the colorist or the person doing grading does is they look at every single shot on a histogram, which is like a waveform or however you do it, but you're looking for where the black levels are in the original material and where they ought to be. Same for the white levels, and then there are various gradations within the grayscale where you're just either on a straight line, just moving where I guess it's called the gamma is as far as the gray tone, but you can also, if you have the time and the patience, adjust all the various gradations within that range, going shot by shot. And everybody has their own taste. Kevin Brownlow seems to feel that every shot should have some pure black in it. I don't think every shot has that necessarily, but that's what they're doing. So you're doing that, and there are sometimes there are printing anomalies that have to be corrected. So most of the Marion Davies films that survive were prints struck in the mid-30s, the nitrate, and then preservation negatives were made from them. And what we are discovering with a number of those is that 3 frames before and after every title card, because the titles are all spliced in manually, but whoever did the timing, meaning the exposure corrections when the negative was made, mistimed those sections all through the film. So the people with Chris Krause and Graham Brown, who have done grading on this, have had to go in and every 3 frames before and after a title adjust the exposure because they were mistimed.
Well,
and it's just how it depends on how it survives, and if you're lucky and have, what like was the case with the Edward Everett Horton films. It was off of nitrate. This is preservation made off of nitrate camera negative. So there was work to be done, but it wasn't quite as it didn't involve quite as much elbow grease as some other films might have.
Wow, that's fascinating. I've been a silent film buff since, I suppose, the late 1960s. But I'd say with digital technology, this is the best time ever to be entering it for the first time, because the quality of images you can see today with cleanup and stabilization and grading, it's never been less work to enjoy a silent movie and not apologize for it. And look, Tom Mix, he was one of the top stars of the era. I mean, we shouldn't have to explain him. This is a guy who was incredibly popular.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this will be a springboard for other screenings and other projects. I know one of the films on the Silent Dogs set is a Tom Mix film called Teeth, involving a dog that bites somebody. And Tom, of course, defends the dog, and et cetera, et cetera. But there's that, and there's a film called Just Tony that I think UCLA has 35mm on that, and there's a few Tom Mix films out there, and there's always the Great K&A Train Robbery, which is a great film. I mean, it's a 1925 film, so there is Curtis McHenry as the extremely frightened cook on the train, but it's a fun movie, and I think that by putting these things out, it gets the films shown more. So maybe it'll lead to more Tom Mix screenings. I know the Gene Autry Museum in California is going to be screening Sky High in June. So that's something to look out for. And I think Cliff Ritalik will be accompanying that. And that's good. This is something that I'm discovering this year, is that I'm licensing a number of our releases on DCP for screenings, especially, of course, Marion Davies. Laura is doing a number of events, so the Marion films are getting out there. But I'm glad to see not only that the Autry Museum is showing Sky High, but that they're getting someone to come in and play.
That's wonderful.
The track is on there, and I encourage people, please hire a musician. I appreciate you wanting to honor the fact that I've recorded a score, but they can buy the Blu-ray and hear it. It's better to have a human being in the room with everybody. So I think that this is the whole thing, is get the films out there. It's easy to complain, well, nobody does this, but the best way to get something, one really good way to get exposure for a film so that it gets attention of various home video companies is to get it booked at shows, whether it's something like Capitol Fest or Cinecon or just any art house screening, just to get it out of the vaults. And that's why last Halloween I booked The Bat, directed by Roland West, at the Cinema Arts Center. Just, I don't know why nobody shows The Bat. There's a good 35mm print. It's a perfect Halloween film. So I thought, well, let me get it out there, and let's see if anybody else picks up on it for next year at Halloween time.
Meanwhile, you gentle listeners, next month, dig into those Undercrank titles. There's a lot of fun there. Marcel Perez is always going to surprise you.
Yes,
Douglas MacLean is going to charm you. Edward Everett Horton, you can have fun. Put down Edward Everett Horton, and then you do his dialogue. Just watch his mouth, and you can do it. Oh, my dear. You can do it along with him.
Yeah. Yeah. And Alice Howell, too.
Alice Howell.
You know,
oh, my gosh.
Yeah. It's all, I mean... Yeah, you know, we usually do a commercial for one of the releases, but I think this episode and our next episode will be brought to you entirely by just everything in the catalog. There's just so much there that is stuff that you haven't heard of, but you should, and is worth discovering. So mark your calendar for June 1st. The Tom Mix is already on pre-order. It'll be out in July on the Raymond Griffith by the time we're recording in the middle of May, but by the time this episode posts, the Raymond Griffith DVD will be available for pre-order, and that'll be out in the middle of June as well.
We were speaking of Tom Mix, who was one of the most popular stars, and we're also going to talk of one of the most popular films of the silent era then and now, acclaimed as the first Best Picture winner, Wings, with Clara Bow, Richard Arlen, Buddy Rogers, Gary Cooper, was Roscoe Karn, some of the
and El Brendel.
El Brendel. Luckily, you can't hear El Brendel, so he's a lot better.
He's very good in this picture. He's good in this, and he's good in You Never Know Women, which is another silent that isn't all that well known. No necessarily a big point that I'm making by sharing this clip, but I played the film this week at the Williams Center, which is in Rutherford, New Jersey. They're doing a series they started a couple of months ago called Art House Tuesdays, and once a month there's a silent film. And most months it's me at their Steinway. And the film they ran this month, in the month of May of 2023, they showed Wings. We had an example of my score on theater organ, I think, on our last episode, and so this is a chance to listen to the same thing on piano. This is about 3 minutes from my live score, recorded with my Zoom H2N close mic'd right on the piano. This is about 53 minutes into the film, and it's about 30 seconds before the moment where Clara Bow drives her Jeep into this small village where we see the troops are marching around. There's a brief moment where we see El Brendel doing a little dance, and then the German plane is suddenly spotted overhead. So that just gives you a little context for what you're listening to and why we go into this little jig for no apparent reason. And the clip ends with the moment where Charles, Buddy Rogers, and Richard Arlen get into their planes, start their engines, and they do that routine with each other. All set, okay, in which I have a theme, the all set, okay theme, and you'll hear that at the tail end of the musical recording here. Live in performance at the Williams Center in Rutherford, New Jersey. Here's 3 minutes of my live score for Wings. yours truly at a Steinway piano at the Williams Center in Rutherford, New Jersey, which is actually housed in an old movie house in that area, not too far from Fort Lee. It's just across the bridge, sort of. Playing for Wings. That's episode 58, kids. This has been the Silent Film Music Podcast with Ben Modell. It's the podcast that takes you inside the mind of someone as they prepare for, perform, and reflect upon performances of live musical accompaniments to silent films. I'm your host, Ben Modell. I'm a silent film accompanist, historian, and presenter. We're happy to have you here every month. I'm joined, as always, by co-producer and co-host Kerr Lockhart. Thanks for everything, Kerr.
My pleasure, Ben. And gentle listeners, 2 requests. Go to wherever you download this podcast from and rate and review the podcast. And then go to silentfilmmusic.com and sign up for the newsletter so you won't miss any of the developments.
We thank you for listening, and we will be with you again next time on the Silent Film Music Podcast with Ben Modell. Until then, I'll see you at the Silence.